On a misty morning in Oregon, I was sitting on my porch. The jasmine tea brewing in the porcelain cup in my hand steamed, mingling with the cool air and leaving a faint fragrance in my nose. Portland's rainy weather had been a companion to me for years, like an old friend. The gray sky and the dampness seeping into the earth stirred a strange peace in my soul. But that morning, there was a subtle crack in that peace. The door creaked open. When my granddaughter Lily stepped inside, the expression on her face froze me in place. There was a mix of shame and tension in her eyes, her hands clenched in the pockets of her coat. It was hard to guess what could be troubling her so much, as Lily was usually a cheerful girl, always rushing in with her slightly messy hair. "Grandma," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't need to come to the family gathering." Her words sliced through the silence of the porch like a knife. She felt the weight of what she'd said, her lips trembled, and her eyes briefly met mine before darting to the floor. It was as if the words had come not from her but forced out by someone else. "Why?" I asked, calm but hiding the tremor inside me. Lily's jaw tightened, and she swallowed hard. "Mom. I mean, Rachel, she wants it to be just the immediate family." Rachel. My son Benjamin's wife. The person Lily referred to as Mom. That name stirred an old wound within me. I had devoted years to Benjamin, then to Lily. My youth, my patience, my health. I worked night shifts to keep them afloat. I saved my last penny to pay for Benjamin's art school. I never complained. I gave up my own dreams so theirs could come true. But now, I was being pushed aside like a stranger in my own home. "All right," I said, a forced smile appearing on my lips. That smile was both a curtain to ease Lily's discomfort and a mask hiding the broken pieces inside me. In that moment, something quietly cracked within me. But I didn't let it show. Because silence wasn't just surrender. Silence was, at times, the sharpest response. And often, silence was the beginning of a secret. My home stood in one of Portland's old neighborhoods, its rain-worn wooden walls standing tall. Henry and I had bought it in 1975. In that house, we had a garden that bloomed with spring rains, and laughter rose on the porch during summer evenings. I could still feel Henry's laughter echoing in the living room walls. When the old swing on the porch creaked, it was easy to imagine him sitting beside me. When Benjamin was a child, he'd nailed boards to the branches of the big oak in the backyard to build himself a treehouse. He wrote his first poems on that porch, leaning against his mother's knees. When Henry died, Benjamin was only 18. I buried my own grief to keep him standing. I forgot my own wreckage so his world wouldn't collapse. But when Rachel entered our lives, everything changed. From the moment she stepped into my home, Rachel treated it as her own domain. She tore down my curtains, removed the family photos I'd kept for years. She called the handmade quilt I'd stitched over the years outdated, and threw it in the trash. In my own home, among my own belongings, I became a stranger. At first, I stayed silent. Family means patience, I told myself. But over time, that patience began to suffocate me. That evening, before Lily left, I handed her a small, old wooden box, marked by the traces of time. "Take this," I said, my voice as resolute as the rising wind outside. "But before you open it, show it to your family." "What is this, Grandma?" she asked, her brows furrowing with curiosity. The box contained a letter Henry had left me before he died. A letter I'd kept hidden for years, knowing it would need to be revealed when the time came. Inside it was a secret that could shake our family to its core, casting light on the shadows of our past. "You'll understand when the time comes," I said, my voice steady. Because I knew, silence was my strength. And that letter, it would either bring our family together or tear it apart irreparably. Lily took the box, her fingers tracing its edges. She held it carefully, as if she could feel the weight of the papers inside. "Grandma," she said, her voice tinged with hesitation, "what's this about?" There was a mix of curiosity and fear in her eyes. With the innocent honesty of youth, she wanted to know but sensed that learning the truth would change her life. Be patient, Lily, I said, looking into her eyes. What's in that box isn't just for you. Give it to your family, let them open it. Because this secret concerns not just one person, but all of us. Lily nodded, biting her lip. She wanted answers, but my silence told her more than words could. She'd known since childhood, when I fell silent, the biggest storm was approaching. That night, I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of rain, Portland's damp, gray clouds had completely covered the sky. I sat on the wooden swing, thinking of the letter Henry had left me years ago. The weight of those lines still rested on my shoulders. Eleanor, he had written, if you trust your family too much, be careful. When you realize people aren't who you thought, silence will be your greatest armor. But share this secret only at the right time. I remembered the day I first read that letter. Henry, on his deathbed, had looked at me with a frail voice. His lips trembled as I held his hand. You'll have to explain this one day, he'd said. But you choose the time. Because the secret wasn't just ours. It was about Benjamin's identity. The truth I'd hidden for years, never telling anyone. Benjamin wasn't Henry's biological son. He was born from my first marriage, a brief relationship no one knew about. When Henry learned the truth, he wasn't angry. Instead, he embraced Benjamin as his own, raising him with care and love, never making a distinction. But that truth remained buried. Rachel didn't know. Benjamin didn't know. Only Henry and I did. And now, years after Henry's death, that secret was breathing again. The next morning, with unease stirring inside me, I called Clara. Clara was an old friend and Henry's trusted lawyer. Though I tried to keep my voice calm while speaking with her, my hands trembled. Clara, I said, we need to go over the documents Henry left me again. The house, the deed, everything. Clara paused on the other end of the line. Eleanor, it's interesting you brought this up, she said. Because before he died, Henry left me a file. There were documents he wanted me to share with you. I went to her office to meet. She had a small room filled with books, dusty folders on the shelves, and an old typewriter on her desk. Clara put on her glasses and placed the files in front of me. The deed to the house is entirely in your name. Even if Benjamin and Rachel think they have rights to it, legally, they have no say. They can't even hammer a nail without your permission. I took a deep breath. So, the house was still mine. Despite all the pressure Rachel had put on me. This house was the symbol of the life Henry and I had built together. But Clara continued. And there's more. She pulled another document from the desk, pointing to it with her pen. Before he died, Henry bought a building downtown. It's in your name. Back then, it was a small investment, but now it's worth millions. Eleanor, without even realizing it, you're the owner of a significant inheritance. At that moment, my throat tightened. Henry's legacy wasn't just a house. That building might be the key to my future. A strange mix of joy and sorrow stirred within me. Because this wealth also carried a secret that could tear my family apart. Clara looked into my eyes. But Eleanor, be careful. If you reveal the letter, you're not just risking the wealth but also your family ties. The truth can sometimes cut like a knife. At that moment, I made my decision. Silence was no longer just about hiding pain. Silence was the beginning of a plan. For a week, my house was quiet, but storms raged within that silence. Every time the phone rang, a knot formed inside me. Finally, the awaited day arrived. As the afternoon rain gently pattered on the porch's wooden boards, the phone rang. Benjamin's name appeared on the screen. Mom, why didn't you come to the gathering? He asked, his voice carrying the familiar impatience, but this time laced with more anger. I stayed silent. He knew I'd choose silence, but he waited anyway. Finally, he continued. Lily brought a box. There's a letter inside. What does this mean? I could almost feel the weight of that box through the phone. I took a deep breath but didn't answer immediately. My silence fueled his anger. "Mom, say something," he shouted. In the background, I heard Rachel's shrill voice. "Eleanor, are you trying to harm this family? You've been a burden to us for years, and now you're disrupting our peace." Harm, the word echoed in my throat. After spending my years, my life, my youth for their happiness, this accusation pierced my heart like a knife. But my voice remained calm, hiding the wound the blade had opened. "Who's harming whom, Benjamin? You, who've shut me out of my own home, or me, who's revealing the truth?" There was silence on the other end. That silence was louder than words. Rachel muttered, unable to contain her anger. "We shouldn't have opened that box. This is the past rearing its head. These are Eleanor's games." But Benjamin didn't respond this time. It was as if a door had opened in his mind, and he was staring at the shadow slipping through. "Read the letter," I said, slowly but firmly. "Then we'll talk." The call ended. For a while, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock. Then the sound of the rain grew stronger, as if the sky itself was weeping for the secret kept for years. That evening, I picked up Henry's framed photo. It was taken on the porch, his calm smile, a coffee cup in his hand. He looked tired but at peace. Looking into his eyes, I whispered, "You were right, Henry. A secret speaks at the right time. And that time has come." The letter would tell Benjamin's truth, who his father was, the sacrifices made to raise him. But it would also carry Henry's love. That letter wasn't just about blood ties, it would show the power of forgiveness. I knew this secret could tear the family apart. Rachel would try to turn the truth into her weapon. But perhaps, if Benjamin realized his mother's silence and Henry's sacrifice, maybe he could rebuild the broken bonds. I closed my eyes. Silence was once again my only refuge. But this time, silence wasn't surrender, it was an invitation. I was letting the truth approach with heavy steps. And the only sentence running through my mind was, "Some secrets don't shout, Benjamin. They just wait. And at the right time, they pierce the silence and speak." The living room's heavy air was like storm clouds hanging in place for hours. Lily, with trembling steps, placed the box on the table. Inside that box weren't just a few papers but the fragments of a life hidden for years. The young girl looked at Benjamin with hesitant eyes. "Dad, you should open this," she said. Benjamin's fingers hesitated on the box's lid for a moment. Everyone could see his hands trembling. Rachel sat stiffly in her chair, her lips pursed into a thin line. The silence was almost deafening in its intensity. When Benjamin took the letter in his hand, the rustle of the paper echoed in the room. As he broke the seal on the envelope, his eyes held a mix of determination and fear. Then he opened the letter and began to read. As the first line spread through the room, the air began to change. Henry's voice seemed to rise from between the words. "Benjamin, I'm writing these lines so you know the truth. Your mother kept some things from you because the time wasn't right. When you were born, your mother had just come out of her first marriage. Your biological father was another man. But know this, from the moment I held you in my arms, I loved you as my own child. Blood doesn't make a family, Benjamin. Love builds a family. And I raised you with my love." Each sentence made the silence in the room heavier. Rachel's face paled, Lily couldn't hold back her tears. Benjamin's lips trembled, tears streaming from his eyes. The letter wasn't just revealing a secret, it was unveiling a father's silent, steadfast promise. When the letter ended, Benjamin placed the paper on the table with trembling hands. A deep silence settled over the room. Lily, sobbing, whispered, "Why did Grandma give this to us now?" Rachel jumped in immediately, her voice venomous. "Is this a game, Eleanor? You've been manipulating us for years, and now you're using a dead man's words?" But for the first time, Benjamin took his mother's side. Clenching his fists and wiping his tears, his voice came out resolute. "No. This is the truth." Rachel was forced to fall silent. For the first time, her words hit a wall and bounced back. That evening, as the rain pounded the sky, a shadow appeared in the light of my porch. There was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw Benjamin. He was soaked, rain dripping from his hair. But the wetness in his eyes wasn't just from the rain. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at him for a long time. The anger was gone from his face, replaced by the fragility of a child seeking answers. As I put my thoughts into words, my voice was calm but heavy. "Because I didn't expect you to break our family. I wanted to protect you. But you pushed me out, excluded me from the gathering. This letter, it was just to remind you how much Henry loved you." Benjamin's shoulders slumped, his head bowed. He murmured quietly, "We're sorry. We made a mistake." His words were shaky but sincere. For the first time in years, I saw not the unfamiliar adult in his eyes, but my little boy. Helpless, but searching for hope. I opened the door wide. "Let's talk," I said. In that moment, the wall built between us over the years cracked. Silence, this time, wasn't coldness but a bridge. It might not fully heal the wounds of the past, but the first step had been taken. And I realized then that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones never spoken. Silence, at the right moment, is the loudest sentence. The house wasn't just walls, doors, and windows. Every corner was a silent witness to years gone by. In the kitchen, traces remained of the days when Lily, with her little hands, climbed onto the counter to sneak bites of cake batter. Back then, her laughter filled the house, and I'd pretend to scold her while my heart overflowed with joy. The porch, oh, that porch. Rainy evenings with Henry came to life in my mind. He'd hold his old pipe, listening to the raindrops fall from the sky, and look at me, saying, "Life is like rain sometimes, Eleanor. It cools you first, then soaks you, but in the end, it brings a rainbow." Those words echoed in my ears for years. But the porch had changed too. With Rachel's new furniture and modern-looking lamps, it was overshadowed by things that weren't mine. The paintings on the living room walls had replaced most of my photos. In the rooms where my laughter once echoed, Rachel's sharp scent now lingered. The house felt like it was no longer mine, but I knew that true memories never fade in the shadow of objects. One evening, Lily came to me. With timid eyes, she sat on the edge of my bed. In her hand was the envelope from Henry's letter. "Grandma," she said in a soft voice, "why did you keep this letter hidden?" My heart ached. There was no accusation in her curiosity, only the innocent search of a child. I took her hand and stroked her hair. "To protect you," I said. "Because some truths become a burden if revealed too soon. But you're grown now, and you needed to know the truth." Lily rested her head on my lap. She cried quietly. In that moment, I realized that what I'd kept as a secret for years could have been a bridge. Henry's words were seeping into Lily's heart too, "Love makes a family." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of that sentence over and over. The fire inside me, on the verge of extinguishing, flared up again. Perhaps this love, ignored, covered up, misunderstood for years, could rebuild our family. The next day, I met with Clara. Clara, my trusted friend, confidant, and the only person who advised me, was a constant in my life. We sat in an old cafe, sipping coffee as she got to the point. "What's the status of the building?" I asked. Clara pulled files from her bag and placed them in front of me. "Eleanor," she said with a serious expression, "it's worth $3 million now. You can sell it, rent it, or use it for a charity. You need to decide what to do." I paused for a moment. My fingers traced the edge of the coffee cup. Then I looked up at her, a determined smile forming on my lips, one I hadn't felt in a long time. "I have a plan," I said. Clara tilted her head curiously, but I didn't say more. Because my plan wasn't just about a building or an inheritance. It was about bringing the family back together. Henry's letter hadn't just revealed a secret, it had also reminded us of the invisible threads that bound us. But to make this happen, I first had to confront Rachel and Benjamin. Because no bond can be rebuilt without facing the truth. As I returned home in the silence of the night, I felt the determination in my heart. This house, these memories, this inheritance, they were all tools. The real goal was for our family to be a family again. A week passed. The storm inside me didn't subside, it grew. And finally, that day arrived. They came to my house for the family meeting. The heavy curtains in the living room were drawn, the dim light cast shadows over us. Benjamin, Rachel, and Lily sat on the couches. The tension in their eyes betrayed the weight of unspoken words. Rachel sat with her arms crossed, her lips a thin line, looking at me impatiently. She was the first to speak. "Eleanor," she said, her voice as sharp as a shard of ice, "this letter, what will it change?" I took a deep breath. All the hurt, all the silence inside me wanted to spill out at once. "Everything," I said. My voice didn't tremble, it carried the resolve I'd held back for years. "But first, I want to hear from you. Why did you push me out?" Benjamin's eyes dropped to the floor for a moment. His hands clasped on his knees, he bit his lip. He was my son, but it felt like a stranger sat before me. "Mom," he began, then stopped. The words seemed to catch in his throat. With effort, he continued, "Rachel. I mean, we just wanted a smaller gathering. We didn't want it to be too crowded." Rachel jumped in, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me. "It was a family matter," she said. "We didn't want to burden you." There was a grain of truth in their voices, but I knew the rest was a lie. They saw me as a burden. Old, exhausting, unwanted. A pang rose in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I stood up. Standing in the middle of the living room, I looked at them. "This house is mine," I said in a resolute voice. "And Henry's legacy is under my control. That building is worth $3 million. But know this, what will hold this family together isn't money or property, but love." Silence filled the room. It was as if even the walls held their breath. Lily leaned toward me from the couch. Her small eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Grandma," she said in a near whisper, "what are you going to do?" There was both fear and hope in her voice. My heart softened, and I reached out to touch her hair. "I'm going to bring us together," I said. "But you all need to take a step too." For the first time, Rachel fell silent. She opened her lips, then closed them. The hardness in her face slowly melted, her eyes showed surprise, perhaps even a hint of guilt. Benjamin took a deep breath and lifted his eyes to mine. "Mom," he said in a trembling voice. "What do you want us to do?" That evening, I shared my decision. The building would become an art center. Because I knew, Benjamin's dream in his youth was to be an artist. Henry had always known this. The letter didn't just reveal a secret, it also reminded Benjamin of his forgotten dreams. "Let's work together," I said to them. "Let's turn that building into more than just bricks and walls. Let's keep Henry's memory alive. Let's make it a place where people come together through art and hope. That way, we'll carry not just the inheritance but our love into the future." The silence in the room changed. It was no longer tense but thoughtful. Rachel's eyes were on the floor, her pride seemed broken, but she didn't speak. In Benjamin's eyes, for the first time in years, I saw a spark I hadn't seen before. And in that moment, I felt it, this confrontation hadn't just lifted the burden of the past. It had also opened the door to the future. A month passed, and we began working to transform the building into an art center. Benjamin was on site every day, supervising workers, drawing plans, managing time and budget. Lily organized young artists and gathered volunteers for events. Rachel was hesitant at first, pausing at every step, observing quietly. But she joined in. Her involvement was the first sign of slowly healing the rift between us. Every evening, we gathered at home. The table was filled with drawings, plans, and notes. It was as if we'd returned to the old days, Benjamin's childhood laughter echoing in every corner of the house, Lily's sketchbooks, Rachel's serious but slightly shy glances. Everything was a quiet reminder, a family is strongest when together. One evening, Lily knelt beside me, her eyes shining. "Grandma, was this art center your idea?" I smiled and took a deep breath. "Henry's," I said. "But I brought his dream to life. He thought of you and Benjamin. I wanted to share that with others." That night, alone on the porch, I looked at old photos. Henry, smiling, holding his coffee. I spoke to him quietly. "You were right. Love makes a family. And a family finds its way back together." Days passed. The construction slowly took shape. Old bricks were cleaned, walls painted, gallery lights installed. Benjamin's classes for young artists, Lily's planned exhibitions, Rachel's organized social events. Each was a brick building our center. On opening day, the crowd was like a small flood. Neighbors, friends, and art lovers filled the gallery. Benjamin took the microphone and began to speak. "This is my mother's and father's legacy," he said, his eyes turning to me. "But most importantly, it's a legacy of love. Not blood ties, but devotion and sacrifice keep a family standing." Rachel stood beside me. She quietly took my hand and looked into my eyes. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," she said. For the first time, she was sincere and broken, but in a fragile way. I smiled and hugged her. Benjamin and Lily joined us. The silence filling the room was now a bridge. That night, Henry's legacy was more than just a building. It was a hope that united a family, a door opening to the future. Every corner of the building was filled not only with art but with love. And in that moment, I realized, silence sometimes forges the strongest bonds, not words, but time and the right steps. The family was together again. And I, Eleanor Davis, had learned to speak through my silence. One evening, on a rainy Portland night, I sat on my old porch. With steady hands, I picked up a digital recorder and began to speak. "If you've been pushed aside by someone you love, know that you're not alone," I said. My voice was as calm as a morning lake, yet just as resolute. Silence is not defeat. Silence is the moment you gather strength. And you can use that strength to rebuild your own life. When I finished the recording, I paused for a moment. I smiled softly, feeling an energy within me in the silence. I uploaded the recording to my computer and posted it on the Grandma True Storytime channel. At first, I didn't expect much. It felt like it would remain a quiet, solitary memory. But within a few hours, comments started pouring in. One woman wrote, "I went through the same thing. I've finally found my voice." Another message, "Thank you, Grandma. I heard my own voice. I'm not alone anymore." On Portland's rainy evenings, sitting on the porch, Henry's letter came to mind. "Love makes a family." Those words were a heartfelt guide. He was right. And I had rebuilt that love, not just with my family but with thousands of people who had experienced similar pain. Silence was no longer just a pause, it had become a bridge. The art center quickly became a community hub. Young artists, grandmothers, those left alone, families, everyone was there. Benjamin and Lily came regularly every weekend. Rachel, too, began to participate in the projects, hesitant at first, then as a willing contributor. We looked at each other, laughed, sometimes recalled old arguments, but we no longer judged them. The letter hadn't just revealed a secret. It had forged a bond, bringing together broken families and lonely people. At every exhibition opening, smiling faces, grateful looks, shared stories. These reminded me of the power of silence. Silence wasn't a pause, it was a starting point. And Portland's rain-scented evenings now brought me peace. With every weary step, I saw a community being born in that silence, carrying Henry's words like a guide in my heart, "Love makes a family." From that moment on, the channel didn't just carry my voice. Every story broke someone else's silence, becoming hope for others. Under Portland's gray sky, sitting on my porch, I realized I was no longer alone. Silence had turned into a chorus. And I, Eleanor Davis, was guiding that chorus. Within a year of its opening, the Arts Center became one of Portland's most popular spots. Local newspapers covered this small but impactful project. Young artists held exhibitions, gave music performances, and workshops overflowed. Every weekend, the building's door opened to new dreams. People saw Henry's vision not just as a building but as a source of inspiration. One evening, as I sat on the porch, Lily came to me. Her eyes were shining. "Grandma, this is your creation," she said, her voice filled with both admiration and surprise. I hugged her, stroking her hair. "No, sweetheart," I said, smiling. "This is Henry's creation. But we kept it alive and made it grow. Now it's touching other people's lives." Lily bowed her head, and we sat in silence for a moment, listening only to the sound of the wind and the flickering light of distant street lamps. That night, at my old desk in the house, I decided to transform Henry's legacy into a broader purpose. I established the Henry's Legacy Fund, aimed at bringing together lonely families, grandmothers, and young artists. The first donation was for Lily, for her future. I wanted it to be a safeguard for her education and dreams. Benjamin and Rachel were by my side. For the first time, we truly felt like a family. Silence had become a movement. Silence had created a community. Henry's legacy was not just a building. It was the power of love, a symbol of sharing, protecting, and being together. One evening at the Arts Center, Benjamin approached me. "Mom, why did you keep that letter hidden?" he asked, his eyes still holding a mix of childhood fear and admiration. I sat beside him quietly, taking his hands. "Because I wanted to protect you," I said. "That secret could have shaken you and your family. But the time had come. You needed to know the truth, and you're strong enough to face it." Benjamin nodded, his eyes welling up, but a smile appeared on his face. Rachel approached us, taking my hand. "Thank you for bringing us together, Eleanor," she said. For the first time, there was sincerity in her words. In that moment, 3 generations stood together. We had mended the broken bonds of the past and looked to the future with hope. We were no longer just a family, we had become a community living Henry's vision. Every morning, I started the day with coffee on the porch. The wind brought Portland's rain-soaked scent, and the leaves rustled against each other. Every evening, I spent time at the Arts Center, following projects, overflowing with the creativity of the young. And every story, every young artist's success, broke someone's silence, shining light on their loneliness. Silence was no longer just a pause, it was a power, a legacy, and a community. Henry's words echoed in my soul, "Love makes a family." A year later, I had built a peaceful life in my Portland home. The Arts Center had become a family hub. Women, grandmothers, shared their stories. Stories of betrayal, exclusion, but most importantly, stories of coming together. If you, too, have been hurt by someone you love, made to feel like a stranger in the life you built, know that you are not alone. And you are not finished. Subscribe to Grandma True Storytime, because here, revenge doesn't shout. Here, revenge is remembering. Silence is justice itself. And justice speaks, with a cup of tea, the sound of rain, in its own time.